Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri 1917 diary entry on a windy Sunday afternoon, the 19th of October 2025, and we are continuing on today with Dmitri's long diary entry from the 23rd of September 1917. I almost said 2017. Okay, so our recap last time, it was centered on an editorial written by a writer who used the pseudonym Igla, I-G-L-A, and Dmitri was quite enthusiastic about it. I was quite enthusiastic about it too as I read it, and it talked a lot about shame, about the shame that people's, both their inaction and in other cases their action, was bringing down upon Russia, and also touched on the idea of over-reliance on the Allies, or the idea that people would be not active themselves because they would believe that the Allies were going to come and solve everything, and that of course was not true at all. All right, let's go on to the actual text. Yeah, here we go. Just yesterday, I learned that Baratov blank in the Caucasian army, because in view of the fact that the corps entrusted to him does not have sufficient spirit, offensive operations will hardly be possible. The English know this, but naturally they avoid speaking about it to me. Meanwhile, they are having great success in Mesopotamia. It's downright comical to read about the Allied victories. Lucky people! Exclamation point. And now enough of those matters for today. I will return to them many times in these pages, and now I will turn my pen to a description in brief of what's been going on this week. To begin with, my hosts, the Marlings, want to move to Tehran next week. They have invited me to live with them there. At first I wanted to turn them down. Yes, even now I am not entirely certain. Naturally, from the perspective of convenience, I could not find a better place. But, again, as in the spring, there arises the question of whether it will be comfortable for me to live at the English mission. At bottom, of course, I know very well that it would not be entirely comfortable. Naturally, it would give rise to a great deal of undesirable talk. In Gulhek, that hasn't been the case, but the city is another thing entirely. Despite the fact that that's what I think, I will nonetheless live with the Marlings. And then to find oneself an apartment in the city is not so easy, yes, and frightfully expensive. And to live as I did before with General Meidel could also provoke talk and unpleasantness that would even come down on him, because even without my presence, he's accused of being a reactionary. Thinking about the winter, it is entirely unclear to me what I will be doing. Will I really not be going back to Russia? Felix and his advice are all well and good, but after all, I cannot spend my whole life waiting for an opportunity to return to Russia, here in Tehran. To sit here, strictly speaking, blank, a simple coward under the flag of cautiousness, and to wait patiently for the Second Empire. One would have to wait at least 10 years, judging by what's going on right now. And then there's the famous story of my enthronement, and I absolutely do not want that. I have other plans, exclamation point. So, yeah, that is interesting. He has other plans, all right. Let's start with Mesopotamia. It was Russia going back at least as far as Dmitri's uncle, Sergei Alexandrovich, and I think even before him. I don't think he was the founder of the Orthodox Palestine Society. That was a dream to have both the Constantinople and the Straits, and also to have the Holy Land, of course, And so, Dmitri was very much exposed to that. After Sergei's death, Dmitri was still being brought by his aunt to attend meetings of the Orthodox Palestine Society. So yeah, this is an issue not just with Dmitri but with other Russians, to see these great victories as they perceived it by the British, and to look upon that very bitterly. So that's the first of many such instances of that here. Now, with respect to Baratov and the Caucasian army, as Dmitri puts it, well, he was, he was one of these people who had his back against the wall. And in fact, he'd asked Dmitri to leave because of the political instability and the fact that some of the soldiers who called Dmitri Captain Romanov were agitated by his presence as a Romanov there. So Dmitri is keeping in touch. If I recall correctly, he will be seeing Baratov, either getting letters from him or seeing him in Tehran, with Baratov reacting negatively to Dmitri's decision to stay in the British legation. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so what was going on was that it was time to leave the summer house, the summer headquarters of the British legation, and move back to the city. The worst of the hot weather was over, and so it was a seasonal, yearly thing. And Dmitri had arrived, apparently, to live with them during that period of summer when they were in Gulhek. And so they have now officially invited him to make the move with them to Tehran and to live there in Tehran. Yeah, so that's inconvenient for many reasons. When he says he won't be comfortable there, he doesn't mean physically comfortable. He knows perfectly well that that's the place where he'd be the most physically comfortable. But for a Russian officer still technically on active duty, this was problematic. This was, as I've said before, this was really at the heart. I mean, India was really the heart, but as far as where actual activities were taking place, Persia was a very important battlefield in the great game, in the rivalry between, the territorial rivalry between Russia and Britain. They both were desperate to control it. And so to have a Russian officer, let alone a Russian member of the imperial family, living at the British legation, and possibly revealing things from an intelligence perspective, and just it's very bad form. Well, Dmitri recognizes all of this. It really is a crisis of conscience for him. He'll talk about it again later. But there's more than just the comfort of the surroundings. It's nice. He has nice rooms. He has a nice bed. He's completely at the expense of the Marlings and the British government. It's also that, from a psychological perspective, he needs Sir Charles and Lady Lucia. They are what's keeping him going and not falling apart, sort of psychologically. So that's fair enough. I can't say, I don't know about any of you, but I can't say that I would have done otherwise than what he's doing, even though he knows it's wrong. Anyway, he talks about Meidel. So when he first moved to Tehran, he was staying with General Baron Vladimir Nikolaevich Meidel, a man in his 50s, who was chief of the Persian Cossack division at that time. There would soon be a change. And it was good of Meidel, of course, to have allowed Dmitri to stay with him. He was, like Dmitri, a veteran of the 1914 invasion of East Prussia. He'd been commander of the 3rd Cavalry Division there. He was a general staff Academy graduate, so he was a Genstabist. But Dmitri realized that wherever he went, it was causing trouble because, Meidel was already looked upon as a reactionary, and to have a Grand Duke staying with him was even more problematic for him. And so I should have looked this up in Maria's memoirs, Education of a Princess, because I remember her saying, well, my brother arrived in Persia without any friends or resources. And yeah, I mean, he had friends. He had some resources, but not a lot. But if what she's suggesting is that the Russian community there did not welcome him with open arms, then she's quite right about that. He would have had to come up with the money to get his own apartment in Tehran. And yeah, he was kind of a toxic presence for Russians at that time. For Russians who were trying to stay viable as diplomats or officers, whatever they were, trying to find that middle ground that Kerensky had also been trying to find between, the extremists on the left and the extremists on the right. Okay, so he mentions waiting 10 years. This whole idea of the man of action is very, very important to him. And so the first time he mentioned Felix Yusupov's advice to him not to come back to Russia, he was grateful and saying, oh, I'm glad I didn't. But now he's getting stir crazy. Okay, that's understandable. What am I going to do? Am I going to wait here in Persia for 10 years for this thing to resolve itself? They don't want me, to return. Baratov doesn't want me back. So yeah, it's he'll be citing that exact same amount of time, 10 years, when he's trying to decide in 1921 whether he wants to marry a commoner, this young lady that he's kind of fallen for in Denmark. And, saying, well, what am I going to do? Wait 10 years? And it's all centered around this idea of, as he puts it, his enthronement. The idea that he is going to be the emperor, or at least the monarch, once the Second Empire, as he puts it, is established. Yeah, so, his other plans. I have other plans, ... exclamation point. Well, I wish he told us what those were. I wonder if he really did have other plans, or if he's just using it sort of as an idiomatic expression. Well, this is not what I want. I don't want to be enthroned. Yes, he did. He understood that it would be in some ways problematic, but he did want that. Those of you who are familiar with the 1921 diary entries know that as well. So what do we have next time? Well, we have an interesting topic, which is thought control. Not in the sense of somebody else trying to control Dmitri's thoughts. He wasn't paranoid. But of he himself needing to find a way to control his thoughts. Because he's struggling with that. And he, after the Rasputin assassination, he'd had a real plunge. He'd had a real, almost, I think you could call it a nervous breakdown. And that, he can't let that happen again. So the Marlings are one bulwark against that, and also the idea of controlling his thoughts, which is one of the reasons why he started turning very intensely to esoteric religion and to new thought philosophy. But we'll get into all of that next time. And yeah, I hope to see you then. Bye.